The Los Angeles Aqueduct, looking a little bit more closely at that one, transports water from the Owens Valley, east of the Sierra Mountains, to the Los Angeles. And this is the southern end of Owens Valley. In the foreground you see Owens Lake near Olathe, California. Olancha, I should say. So you see snowbelt in the White Mountains. Well, the White Mountains are way to the north of this photo. And then this is the foothills of the Sierras to the left, and then you can see the Owens River running along at the bottom. There was a bit of controversy taking the water into the aqueduct. In fact, the Owens Valley, they refer to it as the Owens Valley Water War. First and so far only time that shots were fired over water supply in the United States. When the aqueduct was going to be opened, there was an attempt to dynamite the opening of the aqueduct at the southern end of Owens Valley. The farmers in the area were upset with the water taken from the valley to Los Angeles. Saying people were upset about the diversion of water from Owens Valley is an understatement. There's still upset caused with water withdrawals from the Owens Valley. The most recent controversy again is the Mono Lake. In the Mammoth area of the Eastern Sierras, there's a creek that comes out called Rush Creek, and it normally at the end of its route goes down into the Mono Lake. But the system, one of the top reservoirs was built was Grant Lake, and from Grant Lake, the water is diverted into the Owens River system, and this was causing the salinity of Mono Lake to increase, which was jeopardizing the brine shrimp that then feed waterfowl. And Mono Lake was ruled to be ecologically natural, so it was thereby by certain environmental laws given additional protections than the Salton Sea trough area was not. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. That the Salton Sea area was a bit of an accident of overflow of aqueduct water, and now this region, the Salton Sea, is allowed to start to go dry and start to die. But the Grant Lake diversion was settled. There's a certain amount of diversion that comes off that northernmost reservoir coming out of the Rush Creek and goes into the Owens Valley, Lake Crowley at the north, all the way down to Owens Lake and the Hiawassee Reservoir before it goes into the LA Aqueduct. So the Grant Lake diversion went from Mono Lake Basin, the Grant Lake Reservoir on Rush Creek. It diverts waters through Mono Craters, which is a large tunnel which goes through the mountains to get to the Owens River. And again, there was a 30-year environmental fight to return some of that water back to Mono Lake. The Owens River runs naturally on a fair portion of the Owens Valley floor and is actually used for recreation. At the southern end, it reaches Owens Dry Lake, which is, I put the word now in there, is now dry. It used to be a saline lake, so it used to have water on the floor in a way like Mono Lake. But due to diversions to the aqueduct system, the lake floor is now dry, and it's now standing as a dry lake. And there's a wind-blown alkali dust issue with that the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is considered responsible for, and has to take care of the alkali dust from wind. See a satellite view of the Owens Dry Lake. And then from then you can see the route of the aqueduct is to this along the eastern edge of the Sierra Mountains there, past the China Lake Dry Lake is visible. Searles Lake is not along the route, but you can see Searles Dry Lake is to the east, and it goes down to the Los Angeles area. So water is diverted just north of Owens Lake into the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which then runs along the western edge of the Mojave Desert down to the Palmdale region before going through the Santa Clarita Basin, Santa Clarita Valley, and into LA Basin. On this slide, you can note the route of the LA Aqueduct, again along the eastern edge of the Sierras, along the western edge of the Mojave Desert, down to the LA Basin outlined in red. It was designed by William Mulholland, and the system is entirely gravity fed. Part of its route is along in canals. This is the southern, you can see the Owens dry lake in the background, and the canal running here along the edge of the mountains. And part of the flow is in tunnels. Tunneling. Some of the greatest tunneling projects to that date were done during the construction of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. Again, being gravity driven, part of the genius of Mulholland was to actually use siphons for some of the flow. So some of the water flows in pipes. These pipes were done like a normal siphon. Take the water, if you have a little range to get over but your endpoint is lower, you can drive the water in a pipe that'll go up and over the mountain. So the Los Angeles Aqueduct runs across the western edge of the Mojave Desert, past or piped under some of these dry lake beds. And I mentioned that the Owens dry lake bed is a bit of concern with alkali dust. You can get dust devils going up on the lake bed, and that throws the alkali dust in the air, obviously, and is a pollutant problem that the LADWP must address. Of course, one of these dry lake beds is rather famous when you get down to the Palmdale Lancaster area, Edwards Air Force Base, which was an alternative landing area for the space shuttle. And Palmdale Lancaster area is north of the San Fernando Valley before the aqueduct goes into this San Fernando Valley through the Santa Clarita River Valley. This is obviously a SR-71 Blackbird flying over the Rogers Dry Lake bed. And its final destination is the San Fernando Valley. It comes down the Cascade. This photograph is from Chris Maven Austin. You can find her online. She has an excellent slideshow of the entire route of the Los Angeles Aqueduct and many of the features along the way, including the siphons and the tunnels. This is called the Cascade, and I always mention it near Santa Clarita. You can see it along the 5. When I mention it, they go, "Oh yeah, that thing." So it's a well-known feature as you're traveling north. The I-5 runs between LA and San Francisco. This is the opening of the aqueduct in 1913 on the left-hand side in the black and white photograph. And then you see on the right a more modern photograph today. That concludes part 8 of my presentation, What's in My Water and Where Does It Come From? Be sure to tune in to part 9, where we'll look at the California and Colorado River aqueducts and then look at how that water is delivered to Orange County.